Welcome to MarketTamer.com. We've got an inflation calculator which we'll show you today, but before we get to it, we'll describe and evaluate some of the news coming across the wires this morning. Bernanke came out and stated that there might be a resumption of growth later in the year. So on the face of it, that might seem like a positive, and perhaps it is. But before we could conclude so, we should evaluate whether there is something more to the story than growth. And to explain, let's consider a situation where I come to you and I say, let's say, put $100 into the market. And I say to you, you know what, I will guarantee you that in 6 months, that $100 will turn into $120 because there will be growth, because the market will have risen higher. Is that a good deal? Well, on the face of it, you'd say, of course, it's a good deal. I make 20% and it's guaranteed. That sounds wonderful. But behind that is something more, which is purchasing power. And that brings us to the inflation calculator here. What happens to purchasing power over the same period? Well, if $100 today could buy you X number of goods and services, but in 6 months' time it buys you fewer goods and services, then you've seen an erosion of purchasing power. And ultimately that's what counts. It doesn't really matter how many dollars you have. It matters how much can those, how much goods and services or whatever you wish to purchase, how much can it buy, which essentially is what we care about. And so that ties in here to the inflation calculator, which comes in from westegg.com/inflation. And I'd certainly encourage you to jump onto the website and play around with the figures if you're interested. Essentially what we have here is 3 line items. We can enter an amount of money. I've just entered $1 here. We can enter the initial year. Let's just go with something random, 1959 here. And enter the final year, and I entered 2007 here. And if you're jumping on the website, you could click submit, you'd get some answers. I'll just fast forward to what they are right now. Essentially what would happen is, or what did happen, was $1 in 1959 was worth just 14 cents in 2007. Another way of looking at this is that what would have cost you $1 in 1959 cost you over $7 in 2007. So if somebody had come to you in 1959, let's just pretend we all were around at that time, and said to you, hey, you know what, in 2007, whatever amount of money you give me, I'll give you double that. Essentially, I'll give you 100% return. It sounded like a good deal. Why? Because there was growth. You would have grown your portfolio or grown the number of dollars that you had. But that didn't count for anything when it came to purchasing power. It offset the decline in purchasing power slightly to a degree, but not to the same degree that was needed to offset the pace of inflation. So returning back to the Bernanke story this morning, just think long and hard about what it means when there is growth in the economy. Is it really a positive, or could it potentially be hiding something else? If there are huge numbers of dollars printed and everything goes higher, that doesn't necessarily conclude that there is that purchasing power is going up accordingly. In fact, it could well suggest purchasing power is declining. And so just because there's growth doesn't mean there is a positive conclusion at the end for us as consumers. So with that said, we'll return to some of the items underlying the economy in future videos. But for now, if you have any further questions, feel free to jump into classes and ask any and all questions. We're here to help. We'll look forward to seeing you there.